Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Having me, as always, my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink, in the middle of Madrid. First time, is it the 10-day format with this, Steve? Is this the first time they did it? I know Rome is too. What are your thoughts on the 10-day? I kind of like it for these.
I don't like it as much. Yeah, I'm glad we so often agree. This one we have a slight disagreement. No, I mean, listen, it's building this week, but it ends up being closer to 2 weeks. It's just a long time for the tournament to unfold. The advantage, in fairness, to the promoters, it's better for the players because Zverev, for instance, had a marathon match. His opener went about 3 hours and 20 minutes, and then he had the day off to recover, and he wins one in love. So there are benefits, when they're playing in the 1 week 1000s and they have a long match like that, the next day you can be a killer. So
we've seen that with players' results in that when they don't have a rest.
Yeah, so for the players, I get it. And for the promoters to have more days, men and women, much longer event, I understand. But I think for the excitement, there's nothing like the 1 weekers where it's extraordinary because maybe a Djokovic or an Alcaraz starts on Wednesday, and then they're going to play every day after that. And suddenly you move from the 32s to 16s, the quarters, and it's just unfolding before your eyes, and it's exhilarating.
But yeah, I bet if we took a vote of the players, they probably permit the 10 days because of what you just said. Easy recovery, obviously.
Yeah, I think.
But we'll see. So, hey, just for listeners' purposes, we're recording this Monday evening. So, we've had about it started Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, my 6 days, 5.5, 6 full days. The matches are done for today. So 6 full days of tennis. Obviously the bigger matches now towards the end of the tournament are going to come this week. We'll do another episode once it's over to wrap it up. But if it's okay with you, Steve, I'll just throw some names out, throw some things that have happened over the past week with this tournament, and we'll go from there. Sound good?
Sure. Sounds great.
The first person I want to talk about, and he's not getting a lot of publicity. He's not playing that well to get a lot of publicity the last couple tournaments, is Casper Ruud. And we know Casper, French Open finalist last year. Yeah, yes, he lost to Rafa. That was pretty much expected, but he did get to the finals of Roland Garros last year. He loses in the third round in Barcelona, and he loses in the second round of this tournament in Madrid. Cause for concern, or will we see him make a run in Roland Garros, you think?
Well, he's got one more shot in Rome to try to get his confidence back. But I have felt like he's been carrying a heavy burden. It's been a big weight on his shoulders the whole year. First, protecting the final round points in Miami. Then knowing that up just down the road is going to be, at the end of the clay court campaign, is going to be Roland Garros, which is a ton of points to protect. And then at the end of summer, going back to the U.S. Open, where he lost to Carlos in the final. So I think that's a lot that it hasn't been a positive for him. You try to get those ranking points out of your mind, but I just feel like he's playing tight, and he's a much better clay court player than he's showing us right now. But there's still time. There is time. If he had a good Rome, could get, say, back to the semis, then maybe we can see another decent run at Roland Garros. Highly unlikely he's back in the final, but I'd like to see him at least make the latter stages and be perhaps get to the quarters.
Interesting to see, and we'll see how he does moving forward. I have to say, my guy Musetti, who I think I publicized last week as a potential wild card to pick for a deep run, not to say to win it, but for a deep run in Roland Garros, he lost in the first round. And maybe it's a reason why guys like him are ranked where they are, because it's it's too much up and down. He's had great wins. He's had some tough losses to the Novaks of the world. He's really dangerous on clay, but again, just the consistency is the problem with him, right?
It is, but in fairness, this event is unlike any of the others. It's unlike Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Rome, in that it's much faster. It's the altitude, it's the thin air. A lot of players, you can see them struggling to control returns that they normally would gauge much better and keep in play, and they're hitting them a foot or two long. And so I feel like, let's see what Musetti does in Italy. Again, that you have the reprieve, you have the chance to get, and Rome's conditions are quite similar to Roland Garros's conditions. So he could well come round again. I don't put too much stock just on this week. With Ruud, it's different because this has been a cumulative thing with him. where he's just hasn't played well for the most part the entire year. One really good tournament, and that's been it.
Well, I want to talk about two players that have come back from injury. They both lost, but boy, it was good to see them on court. Both Sebastian Korda, he lost his first match 7-6, 7-6. Again, that was his first match since his great run in Australia, where he beat Medvedev. And then Bianca Andreescu, I think we both thought she was going to be out a lot longer than what she was. She also lost, but it was good again to see both those players on the court. Tennis is better for having them playing and not on the sideline.
Yeah, I hope that Bianca, it looked like to me, I didn't get to see that match, but I followed that one on live scoring. It looked like she had a set in 5-2 and it got away, which is too bad. It is nice that she's back so soon. None of us expected that. So in her case, yes. And your first one was?
Korda, Sebastian Korda.
Korda, well, yes, Sebastian, understandable. That's just the kind of match you do lose in your first one. But, it's probably 2 tiebreakers going his way if he's more match tough. So I'm not concerned about him. I still think we're going to see his best tennis from Wimbledon on, most likely from the hard courts once Wimbledon is over even. But by that period, he's going to have a lot of matches and hopefully not injured again. And we'll see his best tennis. We'll see something that resembles, I hope, what he showed us in Australia.
A match that I would think, and a lot of viewers would think would go on later in the event, was Paula Badosa versus Coco Gauff. And Steve, Paula beat Coco 6-3, 6-0. And I've been talking about this with Coco. And let's take a step back here, okay? When I'm talking about Coco, it's all relative. Coco has had an amazing career. She's super young, amazing career. We're talking when there's any criticism at all towards her game, we're measuring her up against the very, very elite of the game. So I want to make sure everyone understands that we're holding her to an elite standard, which is what she would want us to hold her to. It's getting against these top players, Steve, it's becoming more common, and they all know the game plan. It's no secret. And Paula even talked about it in the post-match conference. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She was going to go after that forehand, go after that forehand, and go after that forehand. And the best players in the world can dictate to her forehand with some pressure and make Coco come up with stuff time and time again that maybe she's not comfortable doing against maybe lesser known players. This is becoming a little bit too common for me to see in these big matches with Coco.
Yeah, no, it's worrisome. It's worrisome. I mean, but I don't think it is just a matter that they hit through her on that side or that they blast away to the forehand. Always they can get her with the high looping shots too. Sometimes when she has to generate her own pace, she really struggles. Now the forehand has never looked worse than it did against Badosa. Badosa was wise to pepper away at that side, and I hope that it still gets back to my hope being that if they bring somebody in that can really, and they spend that they put aside a block of time. Whether if they don't think they can do it till after the U.S. Open, fine. Then maybe take most of the fall off and spend that time almost exclusively on the forehand and get somebody who's really technically sound, a coach that's so good on the mechanics that they can hopefully make some inroads with her, because it's been glaring. She doesn't double fault the way she once did. That's nice to see that that's disappeared, but the forehand seems more vulnerable now than it's ever been.
Right. And she's got her whole career ahead of her. So hopefully she, will improve on that side. And again, she's already accomplished so much. And let's see if she can work out that forehand and see what she can do, because I think there's a lot of high hopes for her from everybody in the tennis world, including us. And by no means is this a finished product, but it's becoming quite common when she plays the best players in the world of what they're going to do to try to beat Coco. All right.
Yeah,
a fun. Oh, go ahead.
5 years in the upper echelons here, I should say. I mean, 5 years of playing the best in the world. It's like we all get impatient. And I'm sure she does too. And she did get to that Roland Garros final a year ago, which was a nice effort, a very kind draw, but she took full advantage of it. But the expectations, she's just surrounded by high expectations, including her own. And why not? But I think she handles it. I have to say, David, a lot of grace, a lot of dignity. I don't see her whining a lot. I don't see her complaining. She doesn't look miserable out there. She's
very mature,
very mature, good disposition. So I hope she can come out of this, because there's so much appeal there. she's
And
so
time
appealing.
is definitely on her side, Steve. Time is definitely on her
Oh,
side.
yeah, but she as a person is so appealing. So it's hard not to be sympathetic to her.
Well, I want to talk about a fun match. Dominic Thiem versus Stefanos Tsitsipas. And boy, was it good to see Dominic Thiem play like he had been playing pre-injury. I know his record is like 0-9 or something versus top 10 players since the comeback or something, but he played a heck of a match against Stefanos in that match. Stefanos wins 7-6 in the third. Dominic was a little sloppy in the breaker, but boy, what a match. And I think everyone saw on social media what Steph made 39 first serves in a row at one point.
Yeah, he did. He did. No, his serve was incredible. And even in the first set, when he lost his serve once, and that cost him the set, every other game he was serving love games the rest of the time. Not surprising, because it wasn't as if he was taking that much off the first serve. It wasn't like a Beilinson strategy way back when against Lacan in the French finals, where you knew Mats was just spinning it in, but he didn't want to hit second serves, and it was effective. But these were standard first serves from Stefanos. So terrific effort on his part. You're right. It was a really enjoyable match. Two commendable characters in their way, and you felt for Thiem. You're right. He made some errors in the tiebreak. That's where the confidence is lacking. He had 3-1 early, and then it eventually got away, and he lost at 7-5. But it's still a step in the right direction that he can play a top 5 player that tight. So now again, he has one more opportunity prior to Roland Garros, and let's see what he can do in Rome. I mean, I think we saw great stuff from him last fall, then a slump, and now he seems to be back on the ascendancy again.
Yeah. There was, for those tennis fans who may not have seen the match, if you can go to YouTube, maybe pull up the match. If you want to watch one game only, watch that 5-all game in the third set. It was crazy. Thiem was serving. Steph had like 4 separate break points. Thiem wound up holding, but it was just a great game. 10 minutes, I think it was at least 10 minutes, but it was a great game to watch. Points, point after point after point were really good.
That was Thiem's shining moment. Obviously, defend him off there to get to the tiebreak, but obviously it wasn't enough. But I think for tennis fans who've been so familiar with both players across the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, it had the feeling of at least a quarterfinal or semifinal, not an early round match.
No, and what a great moment at the net too, where Steph went up to him and said, "Hey, you're back. Stick with it. Keep going." I mean, it was a real good sporting gesture by Steph, and it's how the two. Both Dominic Thiem and Stefanos Tsitsipas had great respect for each other. So always good to see. Okay, now we got to talk about Carlos Alcaraz. I'm going to leave this one to you a little bit. First match he played was a little dicey. Then he plays Grigor Dimitrov. Looked a lot better against Grigor. I'll let you kind of, walk us through those first two, and then we have a fun potential rematch coming up that we'll get to after.
Well, he started with Ruusuvuori, and Ruusuvuori played really well. I have to say, he kind of shocked Carlos with his controlled aggression. He was blasting away full force. You would have thought it might be a little reckless, but barely making mistakes off either side. So he had Carlos completely on his heels for a set and a half. And Carlos would press a little bit, but the telltale sign was the first set. I think Carlos only tried 2 drop shots the entire set. That tells you that he was not in command, and he wasn't. And then the key game was Carlos was down 5 break points, serving at 2-3 in the second set, and he played brilliantly to get out of that. Saved almost all of them with winners. One serve and volley combination was typical Carlos big point propensity. It was terrific, and then he rolled on from there. But that was certainly danger time for him. And then he was cruising against Dimitrov in his next match, and he went down 4-2 in the second set, but quickly got the break back. And even after Dimitrov held for 5-4, Carlos swept the last 3 games at the cost of 3 points. So he's playing well. But next up is Zverev. That's going to be very interesting, because we remember they met in the finals here a year ago, and then Zverev may have been a bit tired, played the later match in the semis. Carlos had come off his big wins over Nadal and Djokovic, and he won easily. But then when they went to Roland Garros, different story altogether, and Zverev won in 4. So Carlos is going to remember that loss more than he's going to remember the win here. Whether that's enough to get him pass Zverev? I don't know, but I feel like once again Zverev is closing in on his best form, and he loves this court. He loves these conditions. To him, the altitude it's to his liking. He likes the quicker clay court conditions. So I think we could see a really compelling round of 16 contest there.
And for those that remember last year, you know, when Carlos beat Rafa and Novak, what you referred to earlier, those were tough matches. In the final against Zverev, it was no match. Carlos absolutely smoked him. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how this matchup goes.
Carlos had played Novak in the afternoon, a much longer, a very long, tight match went down. It was a third set tiebreak, but he's much younger as well. And then Zverev played in the evening, and he complained later that he was a bit tired. And sometimes that happens with the schedule. If you get the later match, you're unlucky. But none of us were really prepared for that reversal in Paris. Given what we saw in Madrid, we didn't expect Zverev to crush Carlos, and not totally crushed, but a solid 4-set win.
4 sets.
And, you know, then he had that terrible misfortune, the awful injury against Rafa in the semis, when they were playing what looked like was going to be a marathon match, with Rafa winning the tiebreak in the first, and they looked like they were headed for a second set tiebreak. And that's when Zverev took the terrible fall that ended up keeping him out for the year. So this is going to be interesting. It's a match that could ignite Zverev again if he were to win it. He has a lot to gain by winning it. On the other hand, Carlos will be out for what I call friendly revenge. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's professional.
Right. No, I agree with that. Fun, entertaining match yesterday. Had a little bit of everything. Fokina versus Holger Rune. Fokina wins 7-6, 5-7, 7-6. Again, it had a little bit of everything, and it seems to with both those guys, there's been stuff. Not necessarily when they face each other, right? But I'm just saying in their matches when they play, there always seems to be a little bit something more than just the tennis at stake. Holger Rune is still playing good ball. I mean, you don't want to see him in your draw in the French Open. I'll tell you that much.
Oh no, I totally agree. Once again, there were issues. I don't know if it was cramps or exactly what was going on with him, but he was having problems. So was Davidovich Fokina near the end too. They both had these physical issues, but it was some pretty high quality stuff. And then at the end, David, Fokina, he breaks for 5-3, serves, so the match, plays a horrendous game, lets him back in. Then at 5-all, he looked like he was dead at love 30, and he just started wailing at every forehand, and they all went in. It was a brilliant game that he played to hold on when he looked like he was headed out of the tournament. Then eventually, despite seeing the trainer, Rune holding on to get to that tiebreak, it was Davidovich Fokina coming through in a tense tiebreak at the end. So it was nice to see him win it for the Spanish fans. I think he needed that match, actually, strangely more than Rune, who just come off a tournament win. He's fine. He's not going to be. That's not going to hold him back mentally at all. He'll get right on with it in Rome. As you said, nobody wants to see him, and as usual, he went down fighting.
Yeah, two women's matches I want to talk about today briefly, because it's a fun story. You got Mira Andreeva, who was 15 years old. She just turned 16. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. She turned 16 during the tournament. She played Sabalenka today. Sabalenka won pretty easily, 6-3, 6-1. That's not surprising, right? But it's a heck of a story. And there was some good, fun social media content between her and Andy Murray when they were asking Andreeva about what it's like being on the grounds and everything. And she was, in awe of seeing all of the stars on the grounds. And she specifically she specifically mentioned Andy Murray. Andy Murray went back to her on social media. It was really fun. Interesting to see where she goes. Again, so young. And then we talked about earlier Paula Badosa, who beat Coco Gauff. She played Maria Sakkari. Sakkari now the 9th seed in this. Sakkari, her results have still been a little up and down, so she's not as high as she was, last year. And I know she had a rough year in the slams. Sakkari won that match in straight sets, Steve, 6-4, 6-4. I could see Sakkari winning that match, but 6-4, 6-4, I don't know if I saw that coming in straight sets.
She had the upper hand from very early on. It was surprising because you're playing Badosa in Spain, and Badosa fed off the crowd very nicely in when she dissected Coco so decisively, and you thought maybe that it was possible something like that could happen today. So all credit to Sakkari for beating her. Paula is still not quite where she was. Both of these women were in the top 3 in the world, top 2 or 3 in the world, both. And neither one has been able to get. They both want to get back to that territory. And I think I like Badosa's game. I still feel like she will soon be there. I see it happening. I think maybe her upside might be higher. Sakari is always going to be immensely consistent, and that's how she climbed to near the top of the ladder. Was lots of semifinals and finals. She's only won one tournament, but boy, she's a great competitor and a smart one. And she handled difficult circumstances today commendably.
I'm laughing when we mentioned Badosa because once you mentioned her name, I went back. My memory went back to the Indian Wells final against Azarenka, and which was an unbelievable match. Steve, to me, that feels like 5 years ago. I think that was when Indian Wells was in the fall.
Yeah, it was. It was. That was a great final. It was a terrific final. That's what started propelling Badosa toward the top. And then naturally, you have to live up to the laurels, so to speak. Right. And it's been hard for her. And she's an intense competitor, but I think great to watch. I think both of them are great to watch. That was actually, I'm sorry we didn't get 3 sets just to see more of that tennis from Sakari and Badosa. But Badosa's got again, let's see what goes on in Rome and Paris and the rest of the year. I still think that she's got some big results ahead of her.
So hey, so let me ask you this: next time when we do this, is Swiatek and Carlos the champs here?
I think Swiatek, yes, and I think likely I'm more sure of her for some reason, more confident of her. Not to say that I don't think I still see Carlos at this moment as the favorite to win the tournament, but I could see potentially, I don't know, on a great day, Zverev, although I favor Carlos, I could make him the favorite in that match, and then perhaps losing to one of the guys on the other side. No, all things being equal, Carlos wins the tournament, but he's looked a little more beatable this week so far than he did at any time in winning Barcelona.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so we're not even going to talk about Rome yet because we're just halfway through Madrid. There's no draw or anything like that. The next time we speak, we'll wrap up Madrid, and then by that time we may have the draw out. We may want to wait to record to make sure we do have that draw, just because of the depth in the men's and women's game right now. There's going to be some amazing early round matches, like there is every tournament, like there was in Madrid. But we'll probably do this again on Monday night, and hopefully the draw will be out by that time. It should be. With that being said, before we wrap it up, any last thoughts?
No, I'm looking forward. I always look forward to this stretch because we're closing in on the French. So, you see this one wind down, and then suddenly later next week, we're starting Rome. And we still have the question of whether Rafa will be there. We have the question whether Novak will be there. Novak with the elbow, Rafa with the hip. Hopefully they both are able to play in Rome and get themselves well prepared for Roland Garros. So I'm looking forward to this stretch and hoping that both of them, the two superstars, will be back in the mix.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because so many years I would say to you, Steve, you could have anybody in the field, but I'm taking Rafa and I'm going to win majority of the time. I'm going to ask you with both now. Let's say they do both play Rome, and whatever, they do what they do. Maybe they win a couple matches. Are they? I mean, they are not the favorites just because of the lack of prep. I know this sounds crazy because you're going against the greatest clay court of all time and also arguably the greatest tennis player of all time, but those two would not be your clear-cut favorites at all going into the French Open just because of lack of match preparation.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think Carlos will most likely be the clear favorite. Having said that, I look at Nadal and Djokovic a little differently. Nadal, obviously, it's his surface. He's far and away the greatest clay court player of all time. He'd be going for a 15th French Open title. It's astounding. But in his case, he's had so much injury trouble since Wimbledon. I mean, it was amazing that he won the first 2 majors last year and he got through it, and then the injury at Wimbledon. And ever since then, he got very little match play over the summer on the hard courts, very little in the fall as the season closed. Goes to Australia, loses in the second round, new injury, hasn't played since. That's an awful lot of baggage to carry into Roland Garros. Novak, it's a bit different. His schedule's been choppy because of not taking the vaccine, not being able to play certain places like Indian Wells and Miami, but he's had a lot of success in the same period where Rafa has struggled so much, Novak won Wimbledon. Then he couldn't play the Open. But he was pretty much unbeatable through the rest of the year. Only a couple of losses, and he wins the year-end championships, and then he wins the Australian Open at the start of this year. Then his troubles have really been since the clay court season started with the elbow issue. But so I think if he's able to put that injury behind him and play well in Rome, I think he's in a different mindset than Rafa, who's just played so little. And so in other words, I think it would be really crucial for Rafa, David, even maybe more so than Djokovic, although he does need the matches too, that Rafa he could really use like at least a semifinal showing in Rome, which is not going to be easy.
No, yeah. It's just the first time in a long, long time that we can say those two guys are maybe not the clear-cut favorite to win a respective slam. So we'll see. There's still a lot of tennis before. We got Madrid, we got Rome, and then we got obviously Roland Garros. So it starts a long road. This clay court season, you first start and you're like, whoa, there's a ton of tennis to be played. And it creeps up on you kind of fast. So some fun matches have already occurred. We got plenty of more fun matches to go, all leading up to the second slam of the year. Steve, we'll do this again next week. We'll have our winner in Madrid. We'll talk Rome, and then it'll be all prepped to French Open. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here, David. I'm looking forward to it as well, and we'll reconvene soon.
See ya.